Welcome back to Man vs Squirrel, the series where I resign myself to defeat at the hands of a group of 500g fluffy balls of cuteness. Recently, I have been doing a bit of stock take over the squirrel garden and have decided to reassess some of our previous challenges. You may remember some of these obstacles from previous videos. First is the entrance ladder from Man vs Squirrel 3, where I built a vertical maze with a number of distinct challenges. The ladder didn't pose much of a threat, and mostly served to get in the way before I eventually removed it. Secondly is the slack rope from Man vs Squirrel 2, which was one of the first obstacles that taught me squirrels will always find a way to cheat. Both of these basically failed outright. In the interest of redemption, I have combined these two former obstacles into one that should really force the squirrel to get stuck in and finally take them on. Monkey nuts are wedged in the centre and should prove fairly shockproof. With the challenge in place, the squirrels took some time to size it up, figure out the best approach and generally flex their incredible acrobatic skills. I was pleasantly surprised how long it took them to take a go at this. They seemed to take their sweet time really sizing this one up. You could really see the calculations going through their head, and which was the best approach and which... You know, I had considered the tree to be a potential issue, but I was adamant the spindly branches would never hold. They can have the point, but I'm still determined to see them finish this properly. All that's left is to untangle the branches and strap the tree up and out the way. And with the cheating prevented, now the real challenge could begin. Alright, fine, you little show off. I found a bungee rope to strap the tree right up out the way, and in spite of their best efforts to cheat again, I'd finally gotten the tree out of the equation. Now they can do it properly, little bleeders. Well, if it was that easy, then there was no reason to cheat in the first place, was there? The point's well earned. Now, in my infinite wisdom, I decided I wanted a close-up shot of the squirrel on the ladder because I thought it would look really cool. I set my GoPro up right on its tripod against the box, and you can probably guess how that ended. With my stupidity proven, it's now time to look at the next obstacle. This is another one from Man vs Squirrel 2. It was the swing. It saw many iterations, and to be honest, every single one fell short. They were all easily cheatable, so I decided to retire the old swing and pin the double jointed swing up as a second bridge next to our rope ladder and slack bridge. This new bridge offered no easy routes to get to it, and those narrow links of bamboo would prove a real challenge for any skittish squirrel to master. While sizing up the new challenge, the squirrels decided to show off his slack rope abilities, plus a bit of impressive acrobatics. Every angle had to be sized up, but with no obvious option to cheat, it was looking like they were going to have to suck it up and take the challenge head on. With that obstacle bested, let's look to something harder. Christmas had recently rolled by and I had been blessed with some of the UK's most popular smellies. That said, the container gave me an idea for a challenge and a half, one that might actually pose too much of a problem for our dexterous little friends. It might not look like much, but the slippery surface plus the downward slope to the entry meant I wasn't certain they would figure this one out. But I had a mental image of two little legs dangling out of the end of the tube, and I was determined to see that. Either way, I wouldn't call it a success until they had managed to retrieve a nut from the far end of the tube. The squirrels clearly recognised this for the absolutely terrifying challenge it posed, but it didn't take long for them to size up the new challenge. I left some nuts in the easier to reach spot so they would know where to look. Cheating wouldn't be an option, the GoPro's tripod was sufficiently far away to stop any stretching across the gap, and there was not much else they could use. The slick surface of the tube proved more difficult than I had expected, but I left them to scope it out and figure the solution. For a while, they mostly snacked on the easier to reach nuts, or managed to shake them out by rattling the whole squirrel climbing frame. In order to make this a little more difficult, I added adhesive pads within the tube to stop the goodies from sliding out quite so easily. Our bald streak friend continues to put up some of the better attempts, but even so all the squirrels seem to only get the easiest to reach nuts, generally preferring to look elsewhere. Attempt after attempt after attempt ticked by, and it didn't seem like they would figure this out anytime soon. They were certainly interested, but I couldn't tell if they simply did not know there were more goodies up the end of the tube. I let them keep trying, kept the tube well stocked and simply hoped for a breakthrough sometime soon. After a while, I felt the need to intervene, so to help things along a bit I added a stoop. In my eyes this would be a temporary measure, just to see if they could manage the challenge with the added help. With the added ledge for purchase, surely they would master this obstacle immediately. My goal was to give the squirrels time to figure out that there was a bunch of goodies right up the tube, so I let them play around with it and get to grips with the now considerably easier challenge. As with a lot of these videos, what you are seeing is the abridged version, but with each attempt they got a little further up the tube, and naturally I started to leave less and less easy to reach food, and eventually, with a little help from the tripod, we got our first deep dive. I kept this running for a few more days, letting the squirrels completely clean out the tube, but eventually it was time to undo my modification. We were now back to max difficulty, and the loss of the stoop was immediately noticed. Naturally, the GoPro had also been moved further away during this time to prevent against cheating, which they didn't seem to appreciate much either. England went through one of several snow flurries which slowed down progress for a little while, with this quick visit being pretty much the only time we saw any of them for about a week. Once the great thaw had kicked back in, it was time to get underway. Hopefully they wouldn't have forgotten their training with the stoop. As one final mod, I decided to bodge a few holes at the far end of the tube to keep the squirrels assured that there was plenty of food to be had. This really did seem to do the trick, and they were persistently trying to figure out how to get the bounties hidden just out of reach. At this point, several of the attempts were looking close enough to give the point. All I really wanted was one clear reach in and grab from the end. And considering how hard he'd been trying, it was down to our bald streak friend to finally deliver. It wasn't my ideal ending. I had wanted to see the squirrel dangling legs out from the tube, but these guys were too graceful for that, so maybe another one that we get to redevelop over time. Thanks for watching. There, much better.